Angie here with Angie's Beyond the Lecture, and today's topic is going to be geometric proofs. And more specifically, we're covering triangle proofs, and then I also have a similarity proof at the end here. And before I dive in, like and subscribe if you want to see or be notified on more information like this. I'm a STEM tutor, have been so for about the past 2 decades, and I tutor geometry, algebra, chemistry, biology, physics, pre-cal, and so on and so on and so on. So welcome, and you'll see details, for instance, for the worksheet. I'll post that here in the description, so watch for that as well. Now, the first proof that we're looking at here, and you'll see here we have some of the statements filled in already, so it's sort of nice to work through those first because it kind of gives you, it's like training wheels, right? A lot of students tend to, they see a column of statements and reasons, and you kind of get that deer in the headlight feeling and look, and we'll try to eliminate that. So I highly suggest that when you're starting proofs out in the beginning, you find some that maybe have some of the statements filled in, so you're not doing all the guesswork. And of course, one of the primary things you need to recall or remember is that you always put the given first. So that's almost like a given point, right? And I will be typing these in as best as I can because it's hard for me to write with my pen. But nevertheless, we'll go ahead and start, and plus it'll just be neater. But we'll go ahead and start here with the first one. Again, I only have 4, and they kind of get a little bit more difficult. The very end, I believe, is a similarity proof, and that we have to fill in all the blanks. So let's get started. And I like to mark mine up. So feel free to mark up your proofs. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this one. Now we have a given segment XZ is congruent to XW, and then we have a similar statement YZ is, or sorry, not similar, congruent to YW. Both of these are congruent statements. These little guys indicate congruency, so remember that. And also similarity is just a simple like that. We'll see that here momentarily. So I'm going to go ahead and mark up my document here and say, okay, well, XZ is congruent to XW. Remember those little hash marks indicate congruency, and then Y, YZ, and YW. So that would be, I'll just use 1 and 1 here. Okay. So we have 2 sets of corresponding sides that are congruent to each other, and they want us to prove that triangle XYZ is congruent to triangle XYW. And we already have a statement here. So let's go ahead and add our reasons, or statements and reasons on the top. So I'm just going to say, and because I can't really do that fancy, I can't do that fancy, nope, I want to do segment, yeah. Congruent to just do a colon, and then segment YZ, and I'll make this all nice and fancy. Segment YW. Okay. That's a given. Okay, that's a given. I should get automatic points for that. You shouldn't miss that. So the first statement is typically, I've rarely seen exceptions here, where we just regurgitate what was given. So we say segment XZ is congruent to segment XW, and then we have segment YZ is congruent to segment YW. And I just use words because I can't really make those little dashed lines, at least in Notability anyway. There you go. And right below, I'm just going to shift this up just a little bit. And right below, we have a congruency statement that says segment XY is congruent to segment XY. And that is just simply saying a segment is congruent to itself. And we're talking about this guy right here. So I can just say, give it the 3 hash marks and call it good. And we can say this is actually a property of congruence. It's a POC for short, and it's reflexive. So that's a term you all need to be familiar with. We're going to say this is reflexive. POC. There we go. Okay. And they give us a third entry. Well, we should be to the very end, right? We should be able to say that triangle XYZ is congruent to triangle XYW. Now notice they start, I'm just going to go back to marking up the document here, XXYZ. So they're basically saying this triangle right here on top, I'll just mark it up with a little dot. We can just call it triangle one. Yeah, we can just call it triangle one. So this triangle one up here is congruent to XYW. That's triangle two on the bottom. And that looks like triple side to me. I'm going to go ahead and write the text here that triangle XYZ congruent to triangle XYW. Okay. That's readable. Okay. And that's one of our, we have what, 4 or 5 triangle congruency, either theorems or postulates, depending on how you're taught. And we can say, this is our triple side. And a lot of teachers just say, you can say SSS, or, you know, put the little congruency side and call it good. Triple side congruency. So this basically says if the corresponding sides of 2 triangles are congruent in length, then the triangles are considered congruent, and that's it. This is the most basic proof, but I wanted to start here, and we can definitely move on to the next 3 and see how these flesh out. So again, just to recap, oh, don't text there, sorry. So just to rehash the first one real quick, mark up your document so you can kind of see where things are going. Look at what's, like, if there are any statements or reasons given, and we were given a statement that XY was congruent to itself. So it's kind of pointing you in the direction of, okay, I have 3 sets of sides that are congruent to each other. Let's use the triple side congruency theorem or statement or postulate. I believe that's a theorem. Now, if we go to the next one, we have GH and FJ bisect each other. So right away, when I see bisect, I'm going to think, okay, we got some congruent sides going on because they're segments. And then we need to prove that FGI is congruent to JHI. So we're talking I apologize for that. I didn't have the pen activated. Okay, we got that and that. So FGI and then JHI. JHI. Okay, so we basically have this triangle and that triangle there. Demonstrating how we got that. So triangle on the left and triangle on the right. And we can go ahead and say, I'm going to go ahead and say right away that apologize if my keyboard's making noise. We know those are segments. Not going to belabor that. Given. All right. So we have, I'll be proper here, given. Okay. Now we have a given statement here that we can dissect. No pun intended, actually bisect here. We have GI is congruent to HI and FI is congruent to JI. So these are segments that are supposedly congruent. And how do we prove that, right? How do we, what reason? So we're either looking for a definition. It's typically a definition theorem or postulate that we give as a reason. I'm going to say, let's get that out of the way. We have, again, yeah, we have bisectors here. This would be a segment bisector. And we know by definition that segment bisectors cut the segment into 2 equal parts. They're congruent. So I think we can use the definition here. Oh, not definitely. Definition of an angle, or no, sorry, segment, segment bisector. There are, of course, angle bisectors out there. Okay. 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 So again, we know by definition, definitions are common in proofs, and we know that segment bisectors essentially cut segments into two equal parts, right? Or two congruent parts. All right. And number 3 is blank. So we got to sort of literally fill in the blanks there for number 3 on both statements and reason. But I'm going to jump ahead and see what are they saying here, that two angles are congruent. We have GIF and HIJ. Those are sitting right here and right here. Lovely. And I can identify those as vertical angles. Okay. And then we can also say they're congruent to each other. So we have actually 3 and 4 are related. They are related. I'm going to say that angle GIF and HIJ are vertical angles. All right. Let's be proper with English. And then we just say, here's another definition, right? So we know vertical angles are created by two intersecting segments or lines, and we can actually say they're congruent to each other, but that's using the vertical angle theorem. So the first thing we'll do is say definition of vertical angles. Okay. Put that up there. And we know they're congruent to each other using that. And I'll write it out here, vertical angle theorem. Watch the spelling, Angie. Okay, now we have a single last line, number 5, that's blank. So that should tell us that we should be to the point where we can make that triangle congruency statement. And I'm going to take a step back and indicate that from statement 2 that GI and HI are congruent. Hash mark, and then FI and JI. So that's these two guys. And right now I see a side angle side situation. Side angle side. So remember, side angle side is where two sides in the included angle are congruent. We can make the triangle congruency statement. So FGI, and these are kind of twisted and flipped, which is interesting here. But yeah, FGI, that goes up and then down, and this goes down and then up. But you'll notice FG is the outside segment, and then GI is the one with the one hash mark, and then JH goes down. That's the outside segment in this figure, and then we go down HI, which has that single hash mark. And you just need to make sure when you make those congruency statements that everything matches up. So in essence, FG is congruent to JH. Segment GI is congruent to HI. And then FI and JI are also congruent. And I'll go into more detail on another video. I think most students get that. You have to have that the triangle statement needs to be solid, and that the corresponding segments match in how you name them. All right. So now we can say at the very end that FGI and JHI are congruent. Okay. Again, that's just spelling it out. Here we go. And what did we say? That's side angle side, right? SAS theorem. Boy, sorry about that. I'm not sure why that did that. SAS. Oh, we'll just say SAS congruency. Let me look at that up to see if it's the postulate or the the theorem. Most teachers would just accept that, you know, the SAS part, but we'll double check here. Give me a second. Yeah, I have postulate here. Yeah, but most students or most teachers would accept SAS congruency, or you can even say something like that. Oh, SAS, my bad. I was using approximate. Okay, so this is congruency, and this is similar. And down here in chemistry, I use approximate. Those are symbols all, you know, geometry and chemistry students should know. And I made the mistake of writing the approximate. Okay. Moving on to the next one. Got two more left and we're done here. Okay, nice. We have some help here as well, little training wheels. We have angle C is congruent to angle F. Mark that here. And DC is congruent to EF. Always good to mark that up. And if we scan the top, oh, good. They just, they gave us the statements already given, so I don't need to put that. Almost 99.9% of the time, we'll just say given for the reasons on the first statement because it matches. That's verbatim of what's up there. And if we go back, it's going to center this a bit. Okay, so definition of vertical angles is the reason for number 2. So I'm going to immediately say that angle, we know we're talking about this set of angles right here. Okay, so I use 2 lines to indicate DHC and FHE as angles are congruent, and they are vertical, right? And we'll get to that in a moment. And then of course angles C and F, those just have a single mark because those are matching and congruent. Okay, so if we go back here to number 2, I'm going to say that we'll just say angle CHD and FHE because that matches what the proven statement is. And there, I could call it angle FHE or angle EHF. It doesn't matter, but they are vertical angles. Okay. And we know that by definition of vertical angles, just like we saw in the first problem where we have 2 intersecting lines or segments, and those opposite angles are vertical and therefore congruent. So we can actually say down here below, I think we have enough. By indication of number 4 being filled in, giving the congruency statement, we should have enough here to make that conclusion. Now, yeah, so we'll just say angle CHD congruent to angle FHE. Okay, and that's that. Most teachers are okay with that, vertical angle theorem. So let me make sure I have that right. Yes, number 2, angle CHD and FHE are vertical. And then we can conclude that angle CHD is congruent to angle FHE via using the VAT theorem, vertical angle theorem. All right, and we should have enough here. If we go back to our collection of theorems in geometry and congruence and so on, we would look at, I have 2 angles and a non-included side. 2 angles and a non-included side on both of the triangles. So I could say that's AAS, angle side. And I just posted today, a review sheet. It's like a little over a page, and it has all the triangle properties and the congruence theorems, and they're lovely. It's just like a quick reference guide on that information. It's got vertical angles. It's got like the ascending angles theorem, oh, what else? Just a collection. The congruency theorems, there's 4 or 5 of those. We have triple S, ASA, SAS, hypotenuse leg, I think AAS. Yeah. So there's 5 altogether with that. But anyway, back to the story at hand. AAS congruency. That's it. Last but not least, to spice things up, I'm doing a similarity theorem and or proof, and this is all blank, right? So we can start off before we dive in here. I'm just going to put in that segment AE is parallel to segment CD. Okay, right off the bat, that's a given. Let's not waste our time going over that given. Okay, now what that means is I like to draw these little parallel lines marks that say, okay, well, AE, parallel lines make their appearance in triangles, especially in these types of figures, because we can start actually assigning angle congruencies, because we know a lot of angles. They're either supplementary or they're congruent in that parallel lines unit. So probably the number one reason why we discuss lines before we hop into triangle congruency about midway through the semester. I'll go ahead and adjust that. Okay, now we have to prove a similarity theorem though. So yeah, we have to say this particular mark indicates congruent or similarity. I apologize, not congruency. Remember, congruency is like this. All right, that's not the same. That's not the same. We need to look at similarity theorems, and mercifully, we only have 3. We have the triple side SSS, we have SAS, and then we have angle, right? So we only have 3. I'll go ahead and type them up here. So we have SSS, similarity, SAS, similarity, and then angle, similarity. Okay, which I think we would need to go with double A, because I don't see anything about segment length, right? Segment length would put me in triple S or SAS. But I have a feeling we're going to be doing angles only in this particular proof. And just to go over the definitions of these similarity theorems, triple side, just like congruency, triple side just means if we have the sides in proportion to each other, right? They don't have to be congruent, just in proportion. So you could have a triangle, for instance, like this, like that, and each side is 1, and then each side is 2 over here, right? So we have small triangle, bigger triangle. If everything scales up by a factor of 2, they're all in proportion to each other, we can use that triple side similarity to say they're similar. And SAS, the only thing you have to do there is just insert an angle in that particular situation. So the 2 sides and then the would have to be in proportion to each other, and then the included angle would have to be congruent. And then last but not least, we have the AA similarity theorem, and that simply states, okay, if we have 2 angles and 2 triangles that are congruent to each other, we can say at most we can say they're similar to each other. Okay, so those are the 3 similarity statements that we use, theorems that we use, and from here we'll just have to dissect the figure and figure out, okay, which angles are congruent to each other, and can we probably use that double A theorem. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Okay, and I would probably use the vertical angles, ABE and DBC, because those are vertical. Those are pretty easy to set up as being vertical and congruent. So angles, I'll just say ABE and DBC. And that's because definition of vertical angles. I'll abbreviate that there. And then we can make the statement that angle are congruent. We'll use the VAT there. Vertical angle theorem. Okay, let me make sure I have that right. So I used angle ABE and DBC. Yeah. That angle in the center is, or the angles created in the center are both congruent to each other. And then I would say we could use this particular line as a transversal. So think of these parallel lines extending out, right? So it's easier for me to say, okay, I have this two, sorry, that line didn't go out very well. I have this two parallel lines, right? And I have a transversal cutting through it. That's kind of how we're looking at it. Here's our transversal. Okay, these two are parallel to each other, right? You just kind of have to picture, I think it's easier for students to picture those two lines extending out top and bottom. We have segment ED cutting through it as a transversal. And we could say, and I'm just going to eliminate the clutter. Yeah. So we could say, for instance, this angle right here and this angle right here, they're alternate interior angles and therefore they're congruent. We should probably announce them by definition, just as we do the vertical angles. And then we'll be in business. All we need are two sets of angles. And let me, yeah, just make sure. Okay. Yeah. Remember, you always use the little marks to indicate congruency. Maybe use 3 at the most. Some students use this in the angle, hash marks. Either way is fine. Either notation's fine. Okay. So I'm just going to go down here and finish this up and we'll be done with these examples. All right, so we have angle, I'll just say angles, come on, angles E and D are alternate interior angles. All right, and that's by definition. And again, I'm abbreviating these. Okay, definition of AIA. Angels. Oh, they think they are, huh? Okay. Hope that's clear. Yeah, AIA, alternate interior angle. Yep. So remember, those are inside the transversal and on opposite sides of each other. And then we can say they're congruent. Difficult. Okay, so angle E is congruent to angle E. Okay. And that is by AIAT. We'll just use the alternate interior angle theorem. So when we have a set of parallel lines cut by a transversal and we have an alternate interior angle situation, we can say they are congruent to each other. And now we have enough to say triangle ABE similar to triangle CBD. CBD. And that, my friends, is, sorry about that. We're going to use AA similarity. Okay. All right. So, you know, the gist of the double A or the AA similarity theorem is that we do know that third angle, so angle A and angle C right here, they're congruent to each other as well. Well, in this situation, they have to be because they're also alternate interior angles with that parallel line and transversal. But yeah, once you have a figure, remember similarity is you know, all angles are congruent, all sides are in proportion to each other, and basically by proving only 2 angles are congruent in, you know, a set of 2 triangles, you don't have to worry about that third. We could prove it here just by the situation. However, not needed. Not needed. We just need two angles that are similar to each other. So that's it. And again, I will have this worksheet, just like a blank worksheet that you can look at. These are some problems I pulled from an old school that I used to help out. And it's good practice, very good practice. So I'm just going to do one more sweep, make sure I think everything's right. Just going to scan here. Again, thanks for watching. I'll have this document linked in the video description as well as other resources that might be helpful to you. So again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.